back to Headbangers podcast. I'm here with Nathan today, and joining us is Heliocentric. Gerard, how you doing, man? How's lockdown life treating you in the life of the pandemic? How you been?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Yeah, despite all the craziness here in the States and worldwide, it's been good for me in my neck of the woods. Nice and quiet outside.
Oh yeah. Well, you definitely kept busy though. You released an album very recently, which is amazing, by the way. Like, I've listened to it over this week.
Incredible.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, it was. It's been a wild ride. It's been the most fun that I've had in a long time, and the most like fulfilled that I've felt in a long time. So it's been good.
Absolutely. You turned it around and you produced something beautiful from it. Just listen to it though. There's so many like influences that go into it. Like, you wouldn't think that it's just one guy producing this magic. Like, I can see like a bit of Architects in there, a bit of Periphery, but it's like you can't really place you in a certain genre. So I guess my first question would be like, what influenced you while making this album? Like, it doesn't have to be just musically, but also just like concept wise.
Yeah. So like, I should probably back up and say that like the album as a whole was a homework assignment. So I just graduated from undergrad here in the States, up at a tiny little school in Chicago.
Right.
And basically my degree was in interdisciplinary studies, which at most schools is a very like, BS, just kind of thrown together degree. You can't decide what you want to study. So you just kind of take a little smorgasbord and choose a little bit of everything.
Right.
At my school, it was a little bit more rigorous, where the whole idea is that you choose one topic and you study it from like you study it from 3 different academic disciplines. So I was really concerned with like religious violence in the Middle East and the 3 Abrahamic religions, so Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And I was really hung up on like that question. And so I studied that whole ordeal from the standpoint of theology, ancient languages, and digital audio engineering. And so this album, these 11 songs, in conjunction with a 93-page thesis paper, were literally what I turned into my professors. Like, here's this, give me my degree.
And how was it like received then? So obviously, like, you produce a thesis, but then you showed them like, here's my metal record. Like, how did that go down? Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, if I was to do that here, but I don't know if I'd get like weird looks. Like, wow, this is quite extreme for a university project. So.
Oh, dude. So I got plenty of weird looks there as well. Like, and what's weirder is that like the school that I was at was it's a conservative Christian school. And so like even weirder, like there was no breaks from it. Also, I'm trying to, forgive me guys, I don't know this software very well, and I can only see like one of you.
Oh, all right, no worries. I believe it cuts off someone sometimes, depending on like the size of your laptop.
Gotcha. Oh man, that's a bummer. I want to see both of you. Anyway,
which one can you see?
Currently I'm looking at Nathan.
Oh, you're not looking at the important one then.
You're both beautiful. I just want to see both of you.
Yeah, Teams is weird. Like, it took us quite a while to get used to. Like, we tried using Zoom for a while and then Skype, and then there was always like issues with each one. Like every issue was different, but it had like a lasting effect. But Teams seems to be the lesser of the evils, so we chose to go with this one.
It's really weird because like we were like trying all these different ones. I'm like, why can't each one get one right? Because what works with the other one doesn't work with the other one, and then what works with that one doesn't work with that one. It's like, why can't they just get it right?
It's a struggle, man. It's an ongoing struggle. Well, hey, one day we'll be able to have like a Joe Rogan roundtable podcast, do it properly, all be in person.
That's the dream. Yeah, that is the dream.
To be fair, that is the dream. If you've got any plans of coming to the UK after the pandemic, we'd definitely like to make that happen.
Dude, I've been to, I think, 23 different countries, and I've never been to Australia. And I hate myself for it. Yeah. That is where you guys are. You guys are.
Oh,
Aussies, right?
we're from the UK.
We're close.
Oh
Yeah.
shoot, dude. Sorry. Where are you guys then? Are you in England?
England,
Yeah, we're in the north of England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
To
dude.
be fair,
I
mean,
feel like
the
such
accent,
an idiot now.
the accent does sound quite
Sorry.
similar, to be honest.
Yeah. It's like the northern accent, like you get constantly compared to like characters from Game of Thrones. Like anyone that's outside the UK, like they're like, oh,
Mhm.
you sound like I've heard that accent in Game of Thrones, and I was like, yeah.
Just think
Dude.
of Winterfell. Winterfell's basically just the north of England.
Yeah. Sure. You know the have you ever watched Game of Thrones?
Dude, that was one of those shows. I always am like super behind with whatever the trend is. So I'm just now starting to watch Breaking Bad. And I'm like, why have I not been watching this on repeat for the past 5 years? But so I was looking forward to like eventually chugging down and watching all of Game of Thrones. But as soon as I heard that the last season was trash, I was like, well, what's the point? Like they ruined it. So.
You know what? When it came out, I remember me and Brad were just going out for some drinks, and I was like, "Have you watched the last season yet?" And he went, "Yeah." I was like, "What do you think?" He went, "Yeah, it was all right." And I was like, "Right, no, you're wrong. This is why it's shit." And I was like, listing like every reason why I hated it. I was like, "This didn't happen right. This didn't happen right." And Brad was like, "Can we just stop talking about Game of Thrones? I kind of wanted to enjoy myself and drink." And I was there like, "No."
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm not ready to let this go."
Dude, I'm 100% there with you. Like, I don't know. On the one hand, you got people who are like, yeah, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. But at the same time, like the new Star Wars trilogy, it objectively was bad. I want to like argue that.
He'll be off for hours.
I hate it so much because like I've just convinced Brad to start watching Star Wars. I was like, he went, the new ones like from the trailers look all right. I'm like, you don't understand. Like I grew up, my grandma gave me the original Star Wars on VHS, and I watched it so much that the tape wore out. So I was like, when I watched those new ones, yeah, I was really annoyed because like the first one kind of gave me a glimmer where I'm like, oh, this could be good. The second one completely ruined it. And then the third one completely shit on my ideas of what could happen in the next one.
Yep.
It was really frustrating to watch. Obviously, being a one-man band, is there any do you feel like there's any limitations? Like, because on my side, I'm in another band. So when I go, I wrote this, sometimes you always get I don't think it'll fit with the song. But I imagine like it's pretty freeing for you because then you're like, I get to decide what fits, sort of thing.
Yeah, like what's the challenges, but what's like the perks of being a one-man band?
Oh man. So I mean, as far as like, I don't know. I feel like my musicianship suffers a lot because like I don't get the experience of jamming out with other musicians, and so I feel like I've kind of been robbed of that experience. You know, I don't just sit down with a bass player and start like chugging out riffs, which could be really cool. But then I think as far as like having a coherent end product, I feel like I'm much more at liberty to do something like that. So my theory is that like a lot of bands make albums and it's like everybody wants a piece of the pie, right? Yeah. It's like the bass player, you know, wants his moment to shine. The drummer wants to be able to like throw some really tasty grooves in there. The vocalist wants to do his own thing. And so it's like, so often it just feels like all the faders are at 10. You know, it's constant balls to the walls, you know, just turned up all the way. And it's like, you can't do that in like, I mean, you can, but I don't want to do it like that. Because for me, it's important for music to have like a dynamic to a flow story that's being told. And, you know, it's like you have these crashing cacophonies and these brutal breakdowns. But then it's like there has to be a palate cleanser. And if everyone's like, fighting for their 40 seconds on the album, then you're never going to be able to get that. And so, I'm a narcissist and an egomaniac. And so, whatever, like, I don't have to keep like forging like my one instrument in there, because I can just be like, no, it needs this, it doesn't need that. So it is really liberating feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely shows through the album. And I think a lot of one-man bands, like one of my favorite artists is Ishmael, who used to be like the singer of Emperor, and he does like solo stuff now. He started off as like a sort of generic but good black metal band, and then he started to go into like this really avant-garde sort of playing around with like Nordic sounds, and then also bringing back some of the black metal elements to that as well. And to me, that's when his musical career took off the most, because he showed, okay, this is what I can do. I've tried doing that, that's been done. Let's see what to do with this. And I think artistically, he's evolved a lot more from that. And listening to Gabriel, like there's so many elements into it. It's like not one dimensional. It's very, what's the word? It's just so much depth to it, and that's what I like about it. Like no song sounds the same, and even in the same song, you've got room to breathe in the songs. You've got breakdowns. There's a bit of everything to help the album feel nice and consistent, but also interesting here and there.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I listened to it. I was like, I messaged Brad. I was like, this was one guy. I was like, this is everything's really well done. I was like, we would do like when lockdown happened in the UK. My band were doing a lot of like stuff from home, and I said, I was like, just trying to piece together like drums like would just take 4 hours just to do 30 seconds. I was like, and this guy managed to make an entire album that's really well produced as well on his own. I was like, that's it. I was like, I wish I could do that.
Man, see I don't know, like sometimes I struggle with, because I don't feel like I'm warranted in being like, oh yeah, I did it all, because, right, you gotta check your privilege and whatever else, and like, realize that, I don't know. So while other kids were like grinding away in college trying to juggle that and an album, it was like, well, I didn't have to do that, because I was literally working on the album for the sake of my college degree. So I don't know. It's like, I feel like if anybody had enough time, they could probably do the same thing. If anybody had however many hours a day to put into it and they gave a damn, they'd probably be able to do the same thing.
I gotta say as well, because as a personal videography and video editor as well, like I'm very interested in the visual side of things, like not only in your promotional videos on your Instagram, but your music videos too. Like, do you have like a lot of creative direction towards them? Like, do you tell people how exactly you want it, or do you kind of let them have a bit of freedom with that?
So most of the videos, I don't want this to sound cocky, but I do the music videos as well. And usually the only part that I outsource is passing off the camera to somebody else. And if I had an extra arm, I would do that as well.
I commend that. I commend that a lot.
And it isn't a thing of like, like I don't trust my friends to do that. But it's just like I can see it in my head, and as soon as I hand that off to somebody, it feels less like my own. So it's my camera, my lenses, my lights, and everything else. And I think all of the videos except for Antithesis were shot in my house in our guest bedroom. It's like it's no budget involved.
No, I completely agree with you there. Like when I get behind a video, if I say I'm directing a short film or I'm doing something along the lines of that, like it has to be my vision. And if I get too many
Yeah.
people involved in it, like the direction shifts, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to let you go. Just let me produce this. I know how I want the camera shots to look. I know how I want it to be edited. So
Yeah.
I get that. I think sometimes it's just if you physically can't, like you said, if you had an extra arm, you do the editing as well. But mostly, if you can do everything, you'd rather do it yourself because then it's executed exactly how you want it to be. So
yeah, Brad's a massive control freak. I remember I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy a Mac so I can help edit the podcast. And I remember he looked at me as if he wanted to kill me, and he like, you're not editing the podcast. I was like, why? He went, I don't like sharing. He went, this is my thing. Let me edit it. I was there like, what? I was like, I thought I'd help out, and he was like, no. He went, you're in charge of booking people. I'm in charge of the editing. That's how it's got to work.
Dude, I feel that. I feel that in my soul. Oh man, no, that's so funny.
It's just like if you
like
editing the videos together, yeah. If you edit it and say if I was to share the edit with Nathan, like we might have a different idea of how we want this video to run. Like, Nathan obviously has inputs, oh, put this in here, put this in here. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But if I'm sat there editing, like I also can't have someone like, looking over my shoulder while I edit. Like I need to be in the zone. And someone's like, oh, I don't think that should be like that. I was like, I've just literally started cutting it. So I'm not talking about you, by the way, Nathan, but just like I've had people like that before.
I remember before the pandemic though, remember when we edited that video together and like the amount of times where Brad would just be like in the middle, so I'm like, yo, it would be really funny if you put this section in there, and Brad was like, can you just let me do this one thing first? I was like, all right. He turned proper. I've never seen that side of him. He was there like, nah, I've got a better idea. I'm doing it. I was like, okay.
It's too real, man. It's too real. I'm struggling to even think of a time where like I didn't have creative control like that. I mean, honestly, like the last time that I can something like that was making stupid YouTube videos with my friends in college, where they had like kind of equal input into everything. Man, yeah, but I don't like it. I like being a dictator.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like I think me and Brad are quite control freaks in our own way. Like with the podcast, like obviously Brad's good at edit, like really good at editing. So I'm like, okay, if you want to just do that, I'll book people, I'll get them booked on and come on and stuff like that. But when it comes to like my band, I can be quite a bit of a control freak where it's like, no. Everything needs to be like with this specific theme that I'm wanting to go for. If it's anything outside of that, I'm sorry, but I'd have to wait until like the next release. like honest, it's me and the guitarist Jordan, massive control freaks with it because we've got like with the band, we've got a bit of a vision that we've both like built up ourselves, and like we were there like this could work out very like pretty well. So we just don't want to steer away from it because like the idea we've got in our heads were like this would actually be really good. So we're just gonna keep going.
So like when you're like a one-man band then, do you get self-critical of yourself because you got no one to sort of direct you in a certain way? Like do you second guess yourself a lot when you add a section or you want to include certain parts?
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably one of the hardest things of being a one-man band is you make something and you listen to it 1,000 times and you stop being able to gauge whether it's crap or not. So that's always really tricky. But yeah, I mean, everything from like the composition to the mix and master. So with the composition, like usually I'll have maybe 2 or 3 times as many riffs that I wrote for the song that actually end up making its way into the song. So it's like the first third of my Logic session is riffs that are in the song, and like another third or half or 2/3 are just like scrapped ideas. And so then, you go back and you like fidget with it and you're like, oh, what if I put this part here? What if I remove back the chorus 4 bars? And it's, you're just trying to find like the thing, but after a while it becomes hard to tell like what is right. Is this part too rushed? Is the pacing of this too drawn out? So sometimes it would feel nice to have a second set of ears on it, but you do what you got to do.
What's what would you say is like your favorite track that you've actually written, where it was like kind of like you wrote it and you listen to it back and you're like, that doesn't need changing. I'm happy with how that is right now.
Yeah, like
what was your favorite track?
What's like your Rain in Blood for you? Like this is my masterpiece. This is my baby.
Probably Whispers. Yeah, man. Like it took me several months to finish up that track and have it in a place where I was really happy with it. The only thing that I hate about that is, and it's also like weird to know if hard to tell if other people are hearing what I'm hearing. I haven't had any comments that have been like, "Ew, you're really out of tune here," or "You're really off key here." So I'm grateful for that. But every time I listen to it, I sound off key, and so there's that. But
I feel that so much. There'll be because I'm a vocalist, so there'll be bits where I listen back and going, I could have hit that note like a little bit better, or I could have done this there, and it's like it's so hard because I always attribute like music as an idea as this quote. It was from a poet, and he said, "A poem's never finished; it's just given up on for that time." That time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's when you see, especially, it's all so true when you see bands like where you hear like a bit and you're like, that sounds different than what it does on the record. It's because that band's been touring for years and they found a bit that actually really works for that song. So they went, fuck it, add it. Like, I feel with music, you're only getting it to a point that you're happy with other people hearing it. It's like, I imagine like, I think for musicians, when we hear it back, we're kind of like, I could have done that differently. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're constantly fighting for perfection, but in your head it will never be perfection. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, man. And like, it's also, I remember on the song Never Again, I was super unhappy with like the first round of clean vocals that I did on that song. And so I went to like a Facebook forum for mixing, and I was like, hey guys, my vocals on this absolutely suck and I don't know what to do about it. And literally every single comment was like, you're insane, these sound phenomenal. And I was like, I couldn't bring myself to believe them. And so, I still ended up re-recording all of the vocals because whatever they weren't hearing was something that I was still hearing, and it upset me. And even now, like when I go back to the previous recording, I'm like, and so, whatever that like other element is, maybe it's not pitch, maybe it's timbre, whatever, but it's like, it didn't make me happy. And so feeling the liberty to be able to do that is really cool. To nitpick and go through 50 takes.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of goes back to the one-man band thing, because like if you're in a band with other people doing 50 takes to be like, we can't do it, no, we want to get it out. But obviously, I actually admire how much freedom you've got with it, because you can literally be like, until I'm happy and only I'm happy with it, that's when it's getting released. I guess like leading up to writing this, what was your inspirations musically? What was you listening to when you were writing it for it to be like, I want something similar to this, but I want it to be my own thing, but I kind of like this little bit, so I'm going to just try to figure out what I'm doing with that. What were you listening to whilst ramping up to write it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, I mean, I forever and will always brand myself as a knockoff Silent Planet. Dude, I I've been listening to those dudes since like 2012, back from like their very first EP. That's probably like lost to the sands of time now. But yeah, man, just something about like how Garrett's vocals just pour passion. And he's an insane lyricist. And actually in my big thesis paper that I turned into my professors, I cited them like several times. So I mean, in a way, they kind of like made it possible for me to do what I do. In addition to them, I'm a huge Meshuggah fanboy.
I can see that for sure. Even just by looking at your 7-string, I was like, he likes Meshuggah. He's got to be.
Dude, one of these days, I want to drop $1,000 on their signature 8-string Ibanez. It's got like a 30-inch scale. It's just, that's one of those overlooked like pieces of guitar tech that people always overlook is scale length, and it's so important.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no,
it's so hard to get that like grindy tone.
Yeah, I think like I've seen the guitar you're on about. It's so gorgeous. Like it's so gorgeous. Have you seen the guitarist from Arcspire, his signature?
Who is it?
It's Dean Jones, I think. I think I might be getting the last name wrong. But he has a signature 8-string. And it's fucking gorgeous. It's like an oak finish. It's really nice.
I gotta say the guy from Arcspire definitely makes use of that 8-string guitar, doesn't he?
You know what I found out? He actually has a YouTube channel with his wife, where they learn death metal riffs and stuff like that. It's actually really entertaining to watch. I've been like binge watching them.
Pretty wholesome,
dude. I don't think I'm finding it. Is it Dean Jones, like DEAN?
Yeah, let me double check because I think I might be butchering the last name. It's Dean Lamb. Dean Lamb, spelled like lamb as in the animal. Yeah, he's
Ooh.
Yeah, his signatures are beautiful.
Oh, sign me up. Yeah, I'll take 3 of those. Gosh, man. Yeah, man. I wish that I had the grant or the money to shell out for like a nice custom guitar. Both of these were under 500 US. They're both super cheapos. Love them to pieces though.
Yeah. Sometimes the cheapest guitars are the best ones though.
Yeah.
Like that Jackson that I've got on the wall over there off camera. It's a really good guitar, especially like to learn on. I remember bringing it to band practice, and I used to think, mate, I might switch out the pickups. I don't like how the pickups sound and stuff like that. And I just realized the amp that I got was just shit because our guitarist plugged it in and was like, this is actually, these stock pickups are actually some of the best I've played, and like playing on it, like this is a really good guitar. I was there like, you're crazy for trying to swap out the pickups because these are actually really good. And I was like, so the amp was just shit.
Dude, I am a firm believer that like the gear can almost always do more than you think it can do. And it's one of those like super sad things. So even going back to what you were saying about with the video stuff, I only just recently found out that my DSLR has an HDMI out, which like I knew that it did, but I didn't realize that I could hook that up to like a small TV and have like a live video of, instead of looking on that crappy little 3-inch LCD. I don't know, but just so many things that I thought like, oh, that's impossible. Oh, I can't do that. And then you realize, wait, no, my computer has like a built-in function, or, oh, this program has,
that's brilliant. Just like, it's definitely a godsend, is that like plugging into a monitor, because sometimes when you've taken a shot, it might look like the best thing in the world. As soon as you hook up to the monitor, you're like, oh, that was out of focus. It didn't seem that way when I was shooting it, so I completely agree. One thing I wanted to say as well, just like the post-release of Gabriel, is I love your social media promos for it. Like the ones when you like getting engaged to the album, like So what was like the thought process behind like all the promo? Like, did you want to just kind of give like sort of a humorous approach and then just I don't know, but I admire it. I gotta admit.
I appreciate it, man. No, it was a lot of fun. So I mean, it's kind of like two reasons for it. One being that whether we like it or not, comedy is what sells at the moment.
It's true.
And like the only videos that I've ever uploaded to YouTube prior to doing promotional stuff for this album, almost all of it was like silly, stupid content. So it still felt like authentic, right?
Yeah.
It still felt like me. But then, you know, if you can churn out some of that stuff, man, like, and even looking at the analytics, like the ads that I run that are memes perform 5-10 times better than just the like, I'm in a band, I make metal music, check it out on Spotify. Because it's just, nobody gives a damn, you know, like, and I think that that's one of the like sobering realizations that anyone in a band has to come to, is that nobody gives a damn, you know, like, and I think that a lot of these younger bands who come out and it's like, they see what Meshuggah and Gojira are doing, and it's like, oh, well, I need to, you know, take some like super suave, sexy pictures of myself, and I need to, and it's just like, nobody knows you, nobody cares, and we don't want to admit that, like, we want to feel like we're that, but it's just, you're not, dude. And so like you gotta
exactly. Well, one thing as well, obviously, is that authenticity sells. Like, people want to see you. They know that you're not this big scary person. Like, they know that you like to have a laugh with things. Like, you know, you see the humorous side and things. You sell your charisma when you make these posts, as opposed to just like taking, like you said, some moody shots of yourself. Like, which is okay. Obviously, it's good. But I think sometimes just like taking the non-serious approach. Like, people know that you might make serious music and the topics might be quite topical. But it doesn't mean that the promotionals, or it doesn't mean that the, you know, when you're selling yourself, it has to be the same. They don't have to coincide together.
No, 100%. And I think also there's like, you know, kind of the element too, where because I don't take myself that seriously most of the time, when I do take myself seriously, I feel like people notice more.
Yeah.
You know, if I was always just like a hard ass and, you know, a stoic philosopher, then when I start talking about X, Y, and Z, they're just like, there's Jared doing this. But, you know, like some of the songs on this album are things that, like, you know, I'm passionate to tell people about this. Like, you know, the song Rung is all about this mentally handicapped bell ringer at the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, who was gunned down by an Israeli sniper. And like the whole scene is just so apocalyptic in a weird way. And it's like, I want people to feel the severity of that. And so me goofing around behind camera and making all these memes, I don't feel like it negates from that. Instead, it like accents it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think too many people and bands in general, they definitely take themselves too seriously sometimes. Like, I've seen it in like local bands in the UK and stuff, where they'd like turn up, do their set, kind of go back, and then like they'd be serious all the way through. And you're like, do you ever not like just have like a beer with your friends and just take the piss out of each other? Like, do you know what I mean? Where it gets to the stage where it's like, you've got to be very self-aware, like you said. Like, it's like, realistically, I just screamed down the microphone really angrily.
100%.
I can't really take myself too seriously with this stuff. Because like most people aren't serious 100% of the time. So, and authentically, like, people, I think the biggest thing that people can do that helps their promotion massively is to show their actual individuality, like, and personality across.
Yeah.
I think that's what sells. I think that's why you see people who are massive on TikTok, who you don't know who the fuck they are, but a lot of people think they know them really well, and that's why they get the audience that they have. Like, and I think that's what a lot of bands sort of like forget about, where it's like you could just, be yourself. And I think that really, what you said really was interesting, because it's sort of like, that's how I also see it, where it's like I appreciate people who are unapologetically themselves.
And I think also, like, in a more related way as well for us, I think when we started the podcast, like, I felt like myself I wasn't being my true self. Like, I was too worried about how I'm going to deliver the questions to people, or just the structure of the podcast. Like, I'll think too much about it. But I mean, when it comes down to it, the more I was just being authentically myself, like, because Nathan's always been sort of charismatic. He's always just had a laugh with things and not taking it too seriously. Like, he gets stuff done, but he has a laugh a bit. Like, he might be nervous, but it doesn't show. Like, So I think I tried to take a bit of more Nathan's approach, like, to the later podcasts. Just to sit down, not to think too much about it, just have a conversation with people, because that's all it is. An interview, it's not a job interview. I'm not going to check your CV and see if you pass or not. So I think, I completely agree. The more you're your authentic self, the more the better result of the product or whatever you're trying to do will be.
Yeah.
Actually, the sweetest things Brad's ever said to me.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think most of it is that me and Brad do spend a lot of that time out with each other. Well, before COVID, outside the podcast. So I feel like I've rubbed off on you a little bit too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Oh man.
One thing that I kind of want to know is, where do you start with writing the track? So do you have a riff idea first, then kind of build the drums around it, or is it always a specific way, or you just that kind of do bits and bats and then realize what goes together in a way?
Yeah. So usually, like, the first thing that I'll do is this might sound like weird for some people, but it's like, if I don't know what the song is going to be about, then I struggle to write at all. And hopefully, like, my personal hope for myself going forward is that if I don't have anything to write about, that I won't write at all.
Yeah.
Because, like, it wouldn't be easy, but I mean, I could just start, churning out riffs and dropping new singles, and kind of like slap some lyrics on top of it. But I don't want to do that. Like, I want, at like a physical level, it hurts to do my vocal style. My vocals are very bad. Like, I use a bad technique. I like the sound of them, but like, it's hard on me. I'm hoarse for a couple days afterwards. And I don't want to churn out stuff just for the sake of churning out stuff. Like, I want there to be a story behind it, if it's going to take that much out of me. But so, as far as like where I actually start with a track, let's take Gabriel, for example. The place where I usually start is, I'm thinking about the kind of story that I'm going to be telling through the entire album. So, like, the entirety of the album kind of has like a story arc to it loosely. Like, each song connects to the next one in some way or another. So the first song on the album, Mariah, it's this really slow, grungy build up, and I knew that the next track had to hit hard to grab people's attention. So I think for that one, it was mostly starting with riffs and everything. So yeah, I usually start with guitar riffs, and then I add drums on top of it. And then once I have all of the music finalized, then I'll go back to like my lyrical ideas and I'll chisel out the lyrics so that they fit the song. But even then, with like writing a riff, usually what I'm doing is I'm trying to think of like, okay, given this image in my head, how does this make me feel? Like, what kind of emotion does this evoke? So Gabriel is all about, this will sound weird, but it's a theological analysis of the Virgin Mary and the Prophet Muhammad. And this is kind of like one of the weird things that doesn't get talked about in theological circles, is that when Muhammad was given the Quran, he was terrified by it. He was absolutely horrified. And I feel like that's like good grounds for a good breakdown. You know, like you have a concrete person in history who feels like he's losing his mind, questioning if he's hearing from God or if he's going mad. That's a good riff. That's good fodder, you know? And so thinking about it in terms of like, he's experiencing beauty, but he's torn. I mean, the man tried to kill himself. He tried to throw himself off of a cliff. And so like imagining that kind of inner turmoil, what kind of a riff does that produce? You know, is it emphatic? Is it dreary? Is it slow and building? You know, all of those kinds of things are the kinds of questions that I'm asking when writing a riff. And I'm sorry, that was a way longer rant.
No, I was just about to say, to be honest, like I find it fascinating, like how you go about writing it, like that you think of the story before you do the music, and it makes so much sense, to be honest. And I never really thought about music that way, that someone would, you know, think about the story first, but when I think about it as well, you know, if you were to write a song about, you know, pirates or something, you know, and then you try to make like a really serious sort of musical background to it, like it doesn't really fit. So it's the fact that you know, ahead step of the game to think, right, okay, this is the story, this is how I want it to sound. You can sort of make it fit so much nicely. Then, because I've heard like concepts of songs as like, this is what the song's about. It doesn't seem that way when I've listened to it.
Yeah.
So no, that's a really interesting approach to writing. So I like it.
Would you say religion's always been sort of like a big thing for you? Where it's like you'd enjoy, like you've always enjoyed the subject matter and reading into it quite a bit. It seems like you're quite passionate about it.
Yeah. So I've actually, my own story is really complicated. And I'm not going to keep you guys here all night going into it. But, you know, at one point I was a Pentecostal worship leader. I was a chaplain. I actually went through a seminary program, kind of like a pseudo seminary, but I spent 3 years in that before I went into undergrad doing my full-time thing, which was, you know, a big part of my degree was a theology degree. So like, I don't know, to me, metal is one of the few genres that accurately convey the depth of theology, because you're wrestling with these huge existential crises. It's like country music doesn't get there. You know, it gets at like a part of it, but there's this level of like deep anguish that, you know, some of these people are wrestling with. And in my mind, it's like this big orchestral or music. It's like chiseled for that genre. Yeah, if I'm totally honest, it makes me wonder, like, man, what are other bands singing about?
Yeah,
because it's like a weird disconnect for me when I hear like this insane breakdown, and then it's like, oh man, that was like life changing. I wonder what the song was about. And it's like, my ex-girlfriend was a bitch. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Like that's what you devoted like that much? Ah, man, it kills me.
Yeah. It's like I've always approached, like, looked at it as, if you're gonna spend time a while working on something, at least write about something you're passionate about.
Yeah,
there's got to be like one thing that you're really passionate about you can pick from, like you see so many people being like, "Oh, I went through a bad breakup and that's why I wrote this song," and it could be a really good song, but you're there like,
Yeah.
I mean, fuck me, man, I've been through a couple.
It's like is metal the right sort of genre to convey that? Like when, like you said, when you've got a heavy breakdown, it's like, I'm so sad, our last kiss. I'm just like, it doesn't really coincide with the breakdown enough for me to be like, yeah, that's brutal, man, I guess.
Yeah. There's been some songs where I've like read the lyrics going, that's the lyric? Oh, well, you know when you're really critical of it after that, going, man, I really liked that song. Then I read the lyrics, it kind of ruined it for me.
So what got you into heavier music then? Like, what was the origin story behind that?
Dude, so you want to hear a really controversial opinion?
Yep, go for it.
My belief is that music preference is biologically and neurologically ingrained. Change my mind. I think that, like, because I remember hearing the Immigrant song by Led Zeppelin at the age of like 5, and I knew, I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, but this is my thing. This is my music. And I think I spent the next like 8 years or so looking for that sound, and never really found it until this is so cringy. You guys ready for a cringe fest?
That's what we're all for. Go on.
All right. I need you guys to teleport back in time with me to MySpace era.
Oh, mate, we were past MySpace.
Tell the teleport.
I don't know about you. I'm too young for MySpace. MySpace.
Are you really?
I was in the MySpace era.
I'm 22. I'm 22, so like MySpace was completely gone for me by the time I like started growing up. Like for me, it was like Facebook straight away.
I'm such an old user, man.
MySpace.
Gosh.
I was in the MySpace era. I remember it, but it was like I was on the back end of MySpace. So I think for like 2 years I used it, and then it started to shift to Facebook. But I got a good 2 years of the MySpace action. So
okay.
I don't know my age, but I'm only 22.
So back in it was probably 2007. I was an edgy kid who had too much time on his hands. I was homeschooled for a little while. It was only like 4 years. I'm still recovering. I guess that's not a thing in the UK, is it? Being homeschooled?
We do have like homeschool, but like most of the time, like it's not a very common thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I've met like I think a total like 2 people in my entire life that's been homeschooled. It's just really not a common thing in the UK. I think it's like bigger, obviously, where in the States because, obviously, like your country's just so massive. Like one city would be like an entire section of our country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I imagine for a lot of parents, travel there is just no. So you're better off homeschooling. So
usually it's the kind of thing. I think travel does play into it partially. For a lot of kids, they're raised by super religious parents, and they don't want the evil secular public school teaching them. So they homeschool their kids and give them like a religious curriculum so that they can, pass on their religious beliefs or whatever. So that's pretty common. Like if you go to a homeschooling community, 90% of the people are going to be, super religious. Usually like the cream of the crop.
See, oh, go on. Sorry, I cut you.
Oh no, I was done.
I was just saying that in the UK, like from my like sort of like looking perspective on it over here, like Christianity, Catholicism, and stuff like that. Even though we are like a Catholic country, and there is quite a few people that are religious, majority of the people have quite a relaxed attitude on religion. We don't really have that much of a sort of religious like forefront in our everyday lives. Really, I wouldn't say, because like we've got Catholic schools and stuff like that over here, but they're quite relaxed compared to like other countries and stuff like that.
I went to a Catholic school, but it was pretty chilled, to be honest. It wasn't that strict. Like, it wasn't like nuns walking around and like slapping people on the head with like a ruler or anything. It was had the Catholic name. Like, you had to do religious education as like a mandatory subject, but in terms of like how strict it was, you know, and like people that took the kids there, like how strict were they as parents that they, you know, have religion taught to your kids and that needs to be mandatory. Like, that wasn't really much of a thing, I suppose. Like, there was some kids that were sort of following that path, but besides that, yeah, it wasn't really enforced, so to speak.
Dude, that's to me, that's like another world. So at one point, I lived in the Netherlands for a few months, which, you know, is very similar to that, right? It's largely post-Christian, very secular. Funny enough, I was in a cult while I was living in the Netherlands. That's its own. That's its own story.
You've got to talk. You've got to talk to us about that. That sounds juicy. You can't just let that slide by.
Obviously, if you're comfortable. But that sounds like it'd be a really interesting story.
Yeah, I think I can talk about it. Oh man. So basically, the pseudo seminary that I went to in the States, man, like it's weird for Americans, like in the Deep South, like they call it the Bible Belt, the really religious sect of the Southeast. So I'm like plop square in the middle of the Bible Belt. Even for kids in the Bible Belt, when I tell them about the kind of school that I went to, they're like, what? But I mean, you're talking about a level of zealotry and a level of like radical religious intensity that's just, if you haven't seen it in person, it's almost hard to believe. You're talking about kids who like stay up until midnight every night reading the Bible, you know, wake up at 5 a.m, pray for an hour in the morning, and then go to so yeah, that was the place that I went to. The school also had a lot of interesting classes. I had a casting out demons class.
No way.
I had a class on speaking in tongues.
Did you go to Hogwarts? Are you sure this is? It sounds like a straight wizard school. That's awesome.
Dude, there's some similarities, man. Actually, there's a lot of similarities. So one of my favorite stories to tell, this will sound like totally foreign and unbelievable, but in my mind, that was just the world that I lived in. Right. So we had a couple of missionaries came and they gave like a guest lecture at one of my night classes. And then, you know, like they're speaking to the class, blah, blah, blah. And then halfway through, they're like, all right, everyone, let's just, you know, get rid of all the tables and chairs in the middle of the room. Let's gather up in the circle, huddle together for an incantation. Or no, an impartation. And so we were like, okay, yeah, this is pretty run of the mill. So we all stand in the middle of this room, you know, kind of, you know, holding hands or just huddled together. And the two speakers, it was a husband and wife duo, they start running around the circle, running around all of us, doing laps around us in circles, screaming, fire, fire, Holy Spirit, fire, God rain down. And like, dude, for anyone who's like not acquainted with that, you're like, this is a cult. This is the weirdest thing in the world. But it's like in their mind, and this is kind of one of the weird areas where like Catholicism and charismatic Pentecostal Christianity overlap, is the idea is that whatever you do with your physical body is actively affecting the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like Jesus has all these obscure passages where he talks about faith and you have to believe, you have to have faith. And they see all of these weird things as like expressions of faith. And by doing these things, you are imparting God's divine power unto you in an unprecedented way. And so like all of it has like a logical coherency to it, but it's still just absolutely weird. It's so freaking weird. So that wasn't even the Netherlands. All of that was the more tame parts back in the States.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Like we don't, like Britain as like a whole, we don't have anything like that. Like I think we've had cults, but like it's not. It's like Britain's quite relaxed. Like I've always seen like the difference between like Britain and America as, like in America, like you guys are a lot more optimistic. Like you are very like, okay, you can do anything. In Britain, we're very pessimistic people. Where it's like, no matter what you say you could go up to like anyone in Britain, you could go up to them and go, oh, the weather's nice today. And I guarantee you, 1 out of those 10 people you ask will go, yeah, it's going to fucking rain tomorrow though. Like, you know what I mean? I guarantee like at least half of them will come back with that response. Like we don't have anything like that over here. Like our religious beliefs are very different. Like majority, I'd honestly say the majority of people here are atheist, to be honest. And I know that might be a wild statement, but I've never really met anyone in the UK that's in my entire life that's religious. I've met two, but I've never really interacted with people in the UK that have religious belief. It might be because my family as a whole is being atheist for quite a while. Like my grandma's, like even my grandma's atheist. Like she does not.
That's impressive.
Yeah, no, my grandma, and I think even my great grandma was atheist. Like a lot of my family are atheist.
I think like the best way to sum it up is, people that are religious in, the United Kingdom, very reserved about it. Like, it's very much in their own space. Like they don't really mention it too much unless you ask them or, like a probing question. Occasionally, you get a few people that are a bit more open about it, but as a whole, people don't really go about shouting about it. So the fact that you told me the story, which honestly sounds like a movie, it sounds crazy, and you really need to tell me more about the demon class.
Oh man.
Set the scene, sir. Young Jared's in the demon class. I want to know the tale.
Oh man. So what's also funny is you were asking about like what got me into the heavy metal scene.
Yeah.
And honestly, in the Deep South, between like probably 2005 and 2015, there was a thriving Christian metal scene. In the US.
Yeah.
Dude, and like, some of the bands like really slapped, right? Like there was a band called Oh Sleeper, super talented dudes. They're actually still around somehow. But they weren't like overbearing with their message or anything. Silent Planet is also a religious band. But anyway, so as weird as it is to say, it's like hard to explain, because you think of like extreme religiosity, you think like, oh, they probably don't listen to music or anything. There was a thriving Christian metal movement at my seminary. And so it was like the weirdest thing where you have like these religious zealots who are doing like door-to-door evangelism and preaching on the street corners, but then also they go to like metal shows on the weekend.
No way.
And it's just, it's such a weird blend. Such a unique culture. But so, regarding the the casting out demons class, some of it is hard to explain, because a lot of it is sort of like armchair psychology mixed with biblical interpretation, and even more like even like some of the really bright theologians that, whether you're religious or not, you got to like tip your hat to them. It's like, okay, you're trying to do this as a sort of science. You're trying to break this down and make sense of it. You've got some of these like esoteric passages in the New Testament where it's like, oh, somebody brought this little girl to Jesus and she was having seizures, and the demon was causing the seizure. But then you have other passages where it's like, it's very clear that they're not equating the two. They're not saying that the demons are actively causing these seizures, but they're somehow influencing each other. And then in other instances, you have like a very naturalistic approach to healing and medicine, where like, I think it's the Apostle Paul tells Timothy, like, hey, I heard that you have some, stomach problems. Just drink some wine. You'll be fine. Which is funny, like, yeah, but I say that to say that he didn't suggest like, oh, you're possessed by a demon, we need to do an exorcism. There was still like a understanding of the body as a physical thing. Anyway, rabbit trailing again. So
I personally love this because
this is so interesting.
I've always been fascinated about religion. Like, even though like I've not had any experience with it in my own personal life, like I personally had the decision, instead of classing myself as atheist, I've classed myself agnostic, because I think it's ignorant to say there's nothing, like, because we really don't know, man. But it's always been like a personal interest of mine, like, no matter the religion, because I personally, I really like you talking about the Bible stories and stuff like that, because for me, like, it's always really interested me, because I find it fascinating that you go to all these different countries and different beliefs, and it all comes down to these ideas of people higher than us and stuff like that. It's like, in a way, part of me thinks it's got to have come from somewhere, because this was before the internet. This was before we even knew other people existed. Yet each one of these different communities and different countries and people who didn't know any of each other existed all had this one idea of a higher power. But and a lot of people might be like, yeah, but that's because they didn't have any science to prove that that's how it was. But I personally think that maybe the idea of religion could also be based in fact, in the sense of that maybe there isn't like a heaven, but maybe in a way that we all become connected as a whole, rather than ceasing to exist. Like, what if your consciousness goes up and then maybe the molecules in your body get changed, and that's your afterlife. You feed the life that's going to be coming later on, and maybe you live passively through it and get to see it all. Maybe there is nothing, but we don't know, so we can't really outline anything.
Sure, man. No, and it's so, it's like almost otherworldly for me to hear somebody just talk about it so candidly, and who doesn't have a dog in the fight. Because like, Americans tend to be very polite, but they're very angry. Like they're fighting for an idea or a side, or a religious dogma that they hold very deeply. And so for somebody to just say like, to just honestly say like, I don't know, man, it could be like this, it could be like that. I'm so used to hearing somebody say like, now these are the 42 reasons that it's this way, and anyone who thinks differently, there's the door.
I think it's ignorant to say it's one way or the other, because we really don't know. It's like, have you met anyone that's dead? No, we haven't.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I've been to the DMV here in the States, the Department of Motor Vehicles. There's some zombies there. People, their souls have left their body.
One thing I wanted to ask you is something that we've been playing around, but I feel like you might be able to give a good answer to this one. So, have you ever experienced anything supernatural? So, anything to do with like aliens, ghosts, whatever, anything just not of the ordinary, I suppose, that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. So, as a preface, my dad is a psychiatrist.
Right.
So I have a pretty strong armchair interest in psychology and neuroscience. Maybe not so much neuroscience, but I tried to be like analytical with human experiences and things like that.
Yeah.
So I remember a very, very weird occurrence when I was 14. I had just become a Christian, a year or two prior, and I was really hung up on this idea, like, I want to see a miracle because, I'm pretty analytical, and I want to, know that I know that God is true. And I think that that's like, for somebody who's unacquainted with kind of like the American breed of Christianity, a lot of it, not all of it, but maybe like half of Christians in the States are wanting to explore Christianity as a historic and ontological truth. So it's not just like a belief or a hope. It's like, no, that like as accurate as saying like we landed on the moon in 1969, it is equally as accurate to say that Jesus Christ literally rose from the dead. Right. They want to say that those are like equally historically accurate. So, where was it? Where in the world was I going with that? My gosh. So, yeah. So I wanted to be able to experience a miracle because I, as a young, zealous 13-year-old was like, well, I'm going to devote the rest of my life to this. I want it to be legit.
Right.
I want to make sure this isn't a Ponzi scheme or something. And so kind of Pentecostalism and the charismatic movement and all of that is just like, if you ever see Christians on TV who are like running around screaming with their arms in the air, they're probably Pentecostal, just as a general blanket statement.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
The ones who like crying, shouting, and jumping are usually Pentecostal. So I was deeply entrenched in that movement for a big portion of my life. And I was at one particularly radical strand of Pentecostal, a church that was a part of, a very radical strand. And there's a part of that night that I still can't explain. So it was a church of maybe like 1,000 people and just this roaring audience of people who were, actively trying to get in touch with the supernatural. And it's so otherworldly if you haven't seen it before. It's absolutely bizarre.
Right.
But so at one point, the preacher says like, all right, we're going to pray over, this specific sect of people. And so if you feel like, I forget what he said, like if you've been battling with depression, I want you to stand up and everyone around them, I want you to go and I want you to lay your hands on them and pray for them. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I didn't know anybody at this church, but like 2 or 3 random people come up to me. And this one girl who was probably in her mid-20s, she walks up to me and she like asks me for my name and I tell her, and then she places her hand on top of my forehead. In Pentecostal services like that, it's very intimate and touchy-feely and kind of like anything goes. So she, just like grabs my forehead like that and, maybe like hand on my forehead and hand on my shoulder, I think, and starts, really praying for me. And you have to appreciate like how sincere of an act that is. She is in her heart of hearts believing that what she is invoking the power of God to make my life better. It would be, she could have given me $1,000 and she would honestly say like, yeah, the $1,000 is great, but the prayer that I just prayed over him, that's going to do him more in the long run. So she's praying for me, and God, please bless him, please, give him courage, give him strength, help him out with his X, Y, and Z, and then, she says, in Jesus' name, amen. She takes her hands off of me, leans over, and blows on my stomach.
Wow.
Hmm?
And it was fast. It was like, amen. And she did like that. And it knocked me over.
Wow.
Like if my chair was not behind me, I would have fallen over on the floor. What? So now this is, and I sat there like stunned, and I was like, what the hell was that? I sat there stunned, and it didn't hurt, but it was like a physiological reaction. She wasn't touching me when she did it. She wasn't like walking me through it and like trying to psycho manipulate me. She wasn't like, all right, now you're going to feel some pressure in your tummy. It was like, amen. And I fell over. So exploring that kind of phenomenon from theological grounds, biblical grounds, psychological grounds, physiological grounds, it gets weird. It gets very weird. So if you should do this after we're done with this call. Go on YouTube and look up a guy named Benny Hinn. He's an American televangelist from India, and he's famous. People have made all sorts of like memes out of this, but he'll like take his jacket and like swoosh. Get call. But he'll take his jacket and like wave it on people, and like an entire crowd of people in the audience will fall over.
Wow.
And what the heck is that? And people are like, oh, it's probably just paid actors, and but something fishier is going on. Something much more bizarre is going on, and it's even more complicated. You could say, well, this is a case in point for Christianity. We've got our miracle. This is it. This is the power of God. You have the accumulative testimony of thousands of people saying, no, they weren't faking it. No, they weren't paid actors. That should be good enough. Everybody convert. But this is a phenomenon that appears in another context, totally unrelated, which is fake martial arts.
Oh, I've read so much into fake martial arts.
Have you seen this? The no-touch jiu-jitsu and stuff like that?
Yeah. Have you ever seen that guy who currently is getting like, the Chinese government is currently trying to like basically make this guy's life as hard as humanly possible to live. Because he actually challenged these fake martial artists, these kung fu fucking masters who can push you over with one finger and shit like that.
The same video that I have then.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Dude, so what they're describing in that video, I'm 1,000% convinced that is authentic. Whatever the hell that phenomenon is, it is legit and it is terrifying. So is it a spiritual phenomenon? And if so, it poses a problem for Christians and non-Christians. Well, less so for non-Christians, because you could just say like, oh yeah, it's just a spiritual force, and anybody can tap into it, including the Christians who tap into it by evoking the name of Christ. For Christians, it's a problem because you have to say something like, well, when we, the Christians, do it, it's done by the power of God. And when those non-Christians do it, it's done as a counterfeit. It's done by the power of Satan, which there's some biblical precedent for that. Like in the Old Testament, when you have Moses doing these insane miracles before Pharaoh, you have some of Pharaoh's magicians in the story who come and they say like, yeah, big deal. We can do that, which is weird. Christians don't usually want to admit that that's weird, but it's like they have grounds for saying that there are demonic powers that are capable of reproducing authentic miracles. It's weird. It's weird. So outside of, the theological, spiritual explanation, You have the question of mass hysteria and corporate psychology, which we know almost nothing about. I mean, it's terrifying how little we know. And one of the budding fields that, oh gosh, in the next 10 or 20 years, we might make some progress on is the idea of quantum biology. And I mean, it just gets nutty, man. Like there's an element in the dynamic of the human experience that we have not captured yet. And that's what I'm curious about. That's why I write music.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, just the whole experience, like, no matter what you believe, you can't deny that it's very interesting, you know what I mean? Like,
I
at the end of the day,
see it as,
if you can't explain something, then you can't, you can't put it down as anything like, like someone that might be a bit critical of it. You can't just say, oh, well, it's this or it's this. Like, it's just too much questions up in the air. But it's certainly interesting, like, definitely.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't even know what consciousness is. So how can you say one thing is one thing or the other? Yeah, I mean, like, it's. I always, my like sort of take on it is that I think as human beings, there's some kind of thing that we don't really understand. Like, if you spend enough time with a person, you can learn. You can kind of figure out what they're thinking. That I mean, like, I have friends like Brad. I've been friends with him for years. And if I'm sat in a room with him for more than 5 minutes, I'll know something's up just by how I feel, like the area in the room. And I think a lot of it goes down to that. I think when human beings are around each other for long enough, there's something that kind of like switches in like our brains, in our consciousness, that like sort of like connects. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it connects us in a way where it's like,
definitely.
It's like I know when Brad's had a bad day when I'm with him, and Brad knows when I've had a bad day when I'm with him. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we've just been friends for years, so now we're like, and some people might be like, oh, it's because you know each other's body cues and shit like that. But I personally think it's a psychological thing that wouldn't, I think, as well, just evolutionary, where say if when I know some people might not believe in evolution and stuff like that, but say when we did evolve, if we did evolve and stuff like that, where maybe we needed it to survive, where it's like, one of these fucking cavemen, they fucked up, and they know they fucked up, but they won't tell us. But we know they fucked up because that's how we feel. We feel like they fucked up. Do you know what I mean? Where I feel like that's could be linked to it, where it's like we have to sort of feed off each other's energy, in a way that we don't really pick up on.
I can like definitely read a room, like when someone's like Nathan said, if someone's feeling like a bit down or if they're feeling a certain way, it's almost like the energy in the room does change, and you can sort of just pick up on that really fast. And even though they don't say anything, you can just read it. And I don't know why. Maybe not even sometimes in their facial expressions, like they might seem like really happy, or they might seem like they're sort of exerting a certain emotion, but then you can sort of look behind that. And I don't know if it's a thing with everybody, but I can definitely read a room very easily.
Yeah. So
hey.
Maybe this is a totally random tangent, but this is one of my favorite little tidbits about evolutionary psychology. In a lot of horror movies, and a lot of like pop culture, they'll take like sclera lens contacts where the entire eye is black, and that's creepy to us. Why is that creepy to us? It wouldn't have been creepy if you black, if you had painted your ears black, but something about the eyes. Why is that creepy?
I think because when you look into someone's eyes, like the eyes is them. You know what I mean? Like you can read so much from a person by their eyes. And it's almost like that's the single defining thing of a human being is the eyes. So if you take that away and that's covered in just pure blackness, I suppose that is a bit obscure and a bit uncomfortable to see.
So that's 1,000% right. And it goes even beyond that. So, you know, when you look at a lot of primates, their pupils are so big that you can't really tell which way they're looking.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, you know, for the most part, we have these bright, colorful irises. And I can tell if you're looking at your webcam right now or if you're not. But when the eye is blacked out, I have no idea where you're looking. And the difference between me looking right at you and looking 2 inches behind you is the difference between you having a good conversation with me and you being stabbed in the back by the predator that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
It's horrifying and unnerving. If you ever, you know, are having a conversation with somebody, just, you know, out of curiosity, just for fun, look right behind them and see what they do.
People have done that to me,
do that.
and like immediately I'm like, what?
They won't be able to focus.
Whatever genes got passed on to me by whatever caveman, it must have been good, because whenever someone does that for a split second, I'm like, what?
Survival instinct, dude. It's there. It's there.
Yeah. If someone was to just start, you know, just flowing conversation, I don't know, we're talking about what we're making for tea tonight or something, and then like they're just like start looking behind me like that, I'd be freaking out so much.
No, I always like, I pick up on like people's mannerisms and stuff like that, and like I think it's interesting that you bring up psychology, because it interests me so much.
Yeah.
Like the way that a brain works, like the fact that you can hypnotize someone. Like people like to think that human beings are like some kind of like special like animal that we've been picked out. No, we ain't shit. Someone who can talk like really nice and then put you into like a little bit of a trance, they can control your life like that, and then say like a secret word, and then you do whatever the fuck they want.
Hypnotism has always been one of those things that I've wanted to like do a deep dive into, because it's weird. It's wild. Have you ever seen these things of people hypnotizing chickens?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I've seen them.
That's one of those mechanisms in the brain that I'm like, I need to understand what the heck is going on there. Otherworldly. Man. But yeah.
A lot of hypnotism, the entire like sort of principle of it is that people don't understand like how your brain can sort of manifest things. So once you learn key phrases and key things that can get most people to sort of like fall under that, a lot of the principle of hypnotism is, from what I've understand, is that there's a common misconcept that, if you can be hypnotized, you're dumb. Yeah, you're not. The people, even really incredibly smart people, can be hypnotized. It just depends on how you're feeling that day. If you've let your guard down and you are comfortable with the person, it becomes a lot easier to hypnotize them. Like, so it's getting them to, a lot of this basic like idea is, I read up that there's been dentists that hypnotize people instead of using like, you know, painkillers and stuff like that. And what they do is they get you to close your eyes and they go, softly and gently just speak, your mouth is starting to feel like a piece of wood. Your mouth is starting to feel like a piece of wood. Your mouth is starting to feel like a piece of wood. And eventually your brain goes, fuck, is it a piece of wood? I think it is a piece of wood. And then like it starts thinking it's a piece of wood. And then that's it. That's basically how hypnotism works. Say it basically enough times whilst you're in a bit of a trance already, by just this calming, relaxing voice, to the point where your brain goes, dude, I think your feet might actually be on fire. You know what I mean?
I thought about it. I think it's definitely the wood.
You know what I mean? That's so wild. Absolutely wild.
People forget, like, your brain can manifest anything. Like, sit in a dark room and just, like, tell yourself there's someone sat in the corner. At first, you'd be like, nah, that's fucking stupid. Second time you tell yourself, you're like, nah. Third time, you're like, there's someone in that fucking corner, isn't there? You know what I mean? How many fucking times has someone done that? Where your brain just pops something in your head and then that's it. You start thinking it's real eventually. That's what we're so malleable as people where we can convince ourselves of this. Like, you could convince yourself of anything. Like, there's a snowman in my garden right now. I could convince myself that's a burglar if I wake up too tired. That I mean, like.
So what you're hitting on at the moment, that's a really interesting portion of psychology as well. So, for example, this came up in a book that I read a little while ago. It should give us pause that we often see faces in clouds, but we never see clouds in people's faces. Why is that? There's, you know, I never, like, in case, except for a few like weird neurological flukes, if somebody walks through a door, I never look over to them and see like a book or like a coat hanger, you know, or like some dirty laundry, but somehow I can look under the bed and I'm like, is that a face? You know, your brain is hyper aware and hypersensitive to detecting faces. And so you can imagine from, again, an evolutionary psychology standpoint, that it's advantageous to be better safe than sorry with seeing potential faces. Because, like, if you see a face that's actually not there, you're probably going to be fine. If you don't see a face that is there, you might get stabbed. You know, you might get jumped. Yeah. But I can't get over that thought that, like, we see agency, we see people, we see other humans often where they aren't there, and that's unnerving to a degree.
What you said about the faces, it's almost like that Snapchat filter, you know, that picks up on faces. And then there's people that, like, they turn it on and there's just like nothing there, but there'll be like a dog filter. Well, that's applied to something in the air.
You know what?
Even Snapchat's
that happened to me once. That happened to me once, and the sheer paranoia it caused in me was unbelievable.
Oh man!
Like, I was sat there like, shit, man, was something there? Like, honestly, it causes such a question. You start like really questioning yourself. Where you're like,
yeah,
I know it will probably be a glitch in the app, but what if?
You turn around and it's like it.
But also, like, you know, sorry, just also, like, if you go into like a place that you like, oh, this place is really haunted, like, it's hard to tell if someone tells you that. So when you go into the building, that you already go in with that preset in your mind, so you're like, okay, you're gonna be alert. You're gonna be, like I said, looking for faces. You're gonna be looking for things in there. Or, you know, if people didn't tell you beforehand that this place is not haunted, would you have the same experiences, or would it be different? Or maybe it's just the energy of the place? Because I mean, I'm very open when it comes to like spirits and ghosts and stuff like that. I mean, my interpretation, I don't really know what to think of what they are, but I do kind of have that sort of belief because I think there's so many people have seen stuff, and, you know, even people that I know have come to me with experiences. But again, like, you know, sometimes I've been places that I just get a really weird vibe to it. But then when someone tells me, obviously, that this place is haunted, don't go in there, like, your brain just goes like 100% like alert, like, what is going on? So it's interesting, like the psychology between that as well.
No, absolutely.
That's a bit of a quick trick question though, because the minute someone tells me a place is haunted, I go, nah, fuck that shit. I'm going the opposite way.
The most appropriate. Curiosity killed the cat, I suppose.
Dude, I don't know, man. I haven't done a whole lot of like haunted houses or stuff like that, but I feel like my visceral instinct is to run headlong into stupid situations, and I'm like, ooh, what kind of trouble can we get into? ISIS is around the corner. Let's see if I can go like shake their hand.
I really, really like watching from a distance. Or like, I'll convince someone else to do it and be like, what was it like? Terrifying. That's what I thought, yeah.
Well, like
I get
more
that.
personal experience of that. So, I mean, near me, I'd say about half an hour away, there's like this abandoned village. So, you know, it used to be like a school, but it's like been abandoned for at least about 20 years. So my cousin took me there, and he obviously informed me. As like, right, bro, this place is really haunted. So I was like, right, when we going? So we went there with a couple of friends, and we used to play like a game in there when someone's like the killer, and you've got to like all hide. So I was like young back then, so this is like, you know, a fun game that you play. So I was like the killer at that point, and I was like searching, you know, trying to find my cousin. So I thought I saw him in the doorway. I had like his sort of physique and stuff, and you know, same height. But he was like sort of shadowed out because he was standing in the doorway, and I was like all the way across the room. And then I walked over to him, and he kind of like ran away. But then my cousin came behind me and touched was like, "Oh, I'm here." So that was probably the only experience I'd ever had, but that was kind of weird. But then again, it feeds into, was it just my preempt sort of way going into it, knowing that, oh, there's people told me this place is haunted, or was it just actually just a spirit? So it's strange to think, but it was weird for sure.
Do you guys like horror movies?
I love horror movies.
I used to. So this is gonna be. I've never told anyone that Brad doesn't know this. So this is gonna be. So as a kid, whenever a horror movie, I used to know it was a horror movie by the music, and when the horror movie music would come on, I would jump behind the sofa and stay there until the trailer had ended. So, but now as an adult, I actually really like horror movies. As a kid, though, I would sprint upstairs, fucking hide behind sofas, grab people and hide behind them, do everything humanly possible for me not to see that scary ass nun or some shit.
Dude, it's always the nuns. I don't know why they get such a bad rap.
You know what it is? I think it's a nun is sort of it's someone that's meant to be caring, someone that's meant to be, you know, someone that you can confide in, and if that person, you know, figure that you've been psychologically told that you could confide in this person, there'd be no judgment because, you know, they're serving God and a higher power is sinister, that fucks you up.
I think it's the same with like children in horror films as well, because, you know, you see kids like harmless little humans, you know, can't really have much of a vendetta unless someone steals a toy or anything. But then obviously in horror movies, they portray them as these little scary creatures that just wander around, start stabbing people. Like, I think it's just taking something that you see as wholesome and that, you know, can't be evil, and then completely flipping it around, and that's what makes it more scary. So I think that's the idea behind it. I don't know.
Have you guys ever seen this Vsauce? I love Vsauce, man. Gosh,
I really like Vsauce.
There's few things that I will fangirl over, but Vsauce is one of them, man. I love him. But he had this video called like, you know, what is uncanny, or what does it mean to be creepy? I think was the title of it. And that video prompted like a whole host of research. So going back to like the eyes thing, the reason why that's uncanny is because you don't know whether to be alarmed or whether you can, you know, relax. Same thing with a kid that's creepy. It's like you're supposed to be innocent, but you're not looking super innocent right now, Jill. You know, holding like a severed head or whatever. Gosh,
the fear of like something being like unpredictable, like when you know something's going to be scary, like it's still scary, but you already know that, you know, you already know what you're getting yourself into. When you take something that you're not too sure, like, is it going to kill me? Is it not? Like, that's when the fear of the unknown really sets in, and I think that's why it works so well for films.
Absolutely.
I've had like one experience. I think it was a ghost. I also had like an alien experience. I've told Brad about 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, and he's also told it on the podcast 1,000,000 times as well.
I wasn't abducted or anything like that. I just saw a couple lights in the sky that would like, they disappeared and then they'd reappear and then just keep popping in and out and moving at like really quick speeds and then disappeared for good. And I saw him like 3 times in the space of 3 nights. And it's literally just when the pandemic had started. So if there were aliens, what would be a better time to sort of visit the Earth and see what we're cracking?
Man. Well, it'd probably be really boring right now, right?
Yeah. Well, no, but you think about it, if you was an alien, that'd be like the best time to be like, yo, shit, these guys have got like a disease that's made them go inside. This has never happened.
See, if I were an alien, I'd be like, they're not moving. I'd go and like poke them with a laser or something. Come on, come outside.
No, I'd be like, guys, they're not outside for once.
Why are these guys hoarding toilet paper?
You know what? Out of all the things that I thought I wouldn't be able to buy, toilet paper was not on my list. I thought I was going to struggle to buy food. I didn't struggle at all buying food. Toilet paper, though, I was having to wipe my ass for leaves for months.
It's too real, man.
But yeah, the ghost
and like
experience.
the few key items. No, but yeah, go ahead with the ghost experience.
Sorry. But yeah, the ghost experience I had, I was 4 years old. And I remember being asleep, waking up, and then like falling out of bed and looking up, and it was just these like two like very red eyes, but I could tell like a person's eyes, and it was like a 7 foot tall shadow above me, and I remember it like peering over me, slowly getting bigger, and it went poof, and that's when I ran into my bedroom, my mum and dad's bedroom, screaming like, "Mum, Dad, I don't know what the fuck I've just seen, but can I sleep in your bed tonight?" And that's when I slept in the bed.
So were you asleep when you saw the thing?
No, I was awake. I remember hitting the floor, being awake, and actually falling on one of my toys that I'd left next to my bed. It was I remember what toy it was. It was you probably wouldn't have this wouldn't have this toy in America. It was called Action Man, and Action Man was our version of G.I. Joe.
Okay.
So like Action Man was our G.I. Joe. So it was an Action Man doll, and I fell on him, and I fell over, and I was like, I looked up, and that's when I saw it. I know I was definitely awake because I could remember how cold the bed frame. We used to have a big metal bed frame. Me and my brother, we used to have bunk beds. So he used to sleep on the top bunk, I'd sleep on the bottom bunk. I remember how cold the metal bed frame was on the back of my neck, everything about it. And it's been one of those things where it's like haunted me my entire life. Like, I'm like, I don't even know the fuck that was.
Maybe
it's like scared the shit out of it.
Maybe it was Action Man getting revenge for falling on him.
Maybe.
It's like, what's his face?
It was one of those things where I still can't explain it. And like I always wrote it off as like me being a little kid and having like an overactive imagination, and that's why I saw that shit. I'm probably still half asleep. But you know, like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know, maybe not. Like, could have been something. There wouldn't have been a reason for my younger self, my 4-year-old self, to imagine a 7 foot figure with red eyes. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. I have no idea, man. Stuff like that is always super tricky.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to wrap up the podcast shortly, but I think one thing that we always like to end on, and I think it's going to be a good question coming for you as well as a single one-man band. What advice would you give to someone that wants to start a solo project? So no other members, they want to do everything themselves. Like, how would you give them advice to go about doing that?
Have fun.
Too right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, there goes my light. Literally right after I said that, the light like exploded and turned off.
You know, that made me jump a little bit. After the conversation we were just having, I'm like, whoa. They heard us.
No, but so like the reason that I was able to do all of this was only because it was fun. And my advice to like anybody who wants to start learning an instrument or how to learn to do Photoshop or video production, make memes. Dude, like make a meme song, make a meme video, make regular memes in Photoshop. Do something that is so low effort that you're not going to feel like this perfectionist pressure. Just have fun, dude. Like one of the most talented Photoshop artists I know, he was a dude that just made memes, and he just got a kick out of them. He would make these stupid, moronic, deep fried memes, but he became like a Photoshop god on accident because he just enjoyed doing it. And the same with like music, man. like I've so much of the stuff that I've learned in like the video suite and everything, I was just like screwing around and just like clicking on stuff, seeing like what was funny. If you do that, you'll last a lot longer, you'll practice a lot harder, and you'll just be better. So, you know, like don't feel any rush to go and make your magnum opus, you know, this deep, pensive work of art. Like go and make some poop songs. Do some random crap that you can enjoy showing your friends and family and not be ashamed of.
Yeah,
I think like you always need to keep the fun part, and I see especially a lot of bands as they get later on in their career that they forget that, and it becomes more of a business, and that's when the music starts to deteriorate slowly. So I think exactly what you said. If you can't have fun with it, if you're doing something creative, you have to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, nobody else will enjoy it. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that was a very good way of putting it.
Very profound. But thank you very much, Jared. This has honestly been one of the most interesting podcast conversations that we've had on here.
Really enjoyed it.
And if you're ever in the UK or we come to America, we'll get you on for a physical, like you said, Joe Rogan experience. Maybe not with the budget.
And if you want to do a side little podcast, a second interview where we just talk conspiracy theories and psychology and stuff like that, that would be like very interesting. I'd be up for that.
I'd be down, man. I'd be down. Gosh. Well, Brad, Nathan, thank you a bundle, man.
Thank you.
No worries, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Catch you later.
And forgive me for calling you guys Aussies.
It's okay, don't worry.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Signing off. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.